Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So I'm gonna do a very hard video for me. So I know this video has been hold off for a while now because I was nervous. It's a very hard topic for me. I don't know why it just felt worse to talk about than some of my childhood because it's the same amount of bad, but yeah, I'm going to talk about like a story time of me aging out of foster care and what that looked like and my life experiences after that. So this might be a couple videos. This video might even be an hour long. Also, I don't have a script like I normally do because of the fact I have a fear that if I write it all down, I will chicken out, give myself enough time to chicken out and just not do it. I know I've talked to, my therapist about this issue where, I really wanted to do this video, but I didn't because of fear and because, it's traumatizing. She's like, well, you don't have to do it if you don't want to. And I know that, but it's very important to me to tell my story because I know that there are other people out there with the same story or close to the same story. And I want to help people. I want people to understand that they're not alone and they're cared about. And no matter what, their past doesn't have to reflect who they are. But also, I feel like this can help me process through a lot of stuff, being honest, I feel like when I do videos about certain things like this, it's very freeing. It helps for me to let go a little bit. Because, yeah, I'll tell anybody who listens, but I don't know why this just feels different to me. Okay, I will start now. So when I turned 18, I didn't have really anywhere to go. Like, I could live with my mother and my birth mother, which I held my mother on a pedestal. I loved my mother so much. I thought she was the most beautiful woman on earth. And I wanted a relationship with my mother, and I missed her very much. And in my head, I was very much younger than my actual age because of everything I went through. And I was on a ton of medications I shouldn't have been on. I had the shakes. I was like an autistic child on medication. Yeah, and we'll get into that a little bit later. So I knew that the number one thing I wanted more than anything in this world was to be with my mother, to see my mother, to live with my mother, to just spend a lot of time with my mother. And I came through a rude awakening that the mother I thought she was not. And I didn't want to believe that at first. And I was very much a rebel because of everything I went through in the group home. So everything I wasn't allowed to do, I tried to do in adulthood. And so when I moved in with my mother, it was great at first, for the first month. She invited family over for my 18th birthday, and I got to see a lot of people that I haven't seen in a while, or I got to meet new people I've never met before. I had my own room temporarily before my mom stole it. And it was a blast at first. And then I realized how toxic my mother actually was. And I know that she subscribes to my YouTube channel. She's going to see this, and this is probably going to hurt her feelings, but it's 100% the truth. And I'm going to be 100% honest on these videos. And I am not going to hold back, because I know there's other people out there that are probably going through the same thing. And I want them to feel like they are supported and they're loved and they're not alone in this. So basically, what ended up happening is I ended up being in my mom's shadow. So because I was around my mother and a lot of people didn't like my mom, just because of how she was, she would beat people with the Bible, and not literally, but people normally know what that means when someone says that. And it wasn't a kind thing either. It was very vicious. And but in the same breath, she started methamphetamines, and I don't know, I hope this video doesn't get flagged. And she started dating a man who SA'd me when I was 3 years old, 2 or 3 years old. And I do have flashbacks from it every once in a while. But this man was awful, like really bad, and would try to intimidate me, like purposely touch my child's things, even though he knew that I didn't like when he did that. He would hide my stuff. He would steal my stuff, steal my library books, and then I would have like a $500 fee for my books and movies that I would get from the library. Like, he was just an awful man. And my mom would side with him every time. And his mother would threaten me, saying that if I told anybody about what he was doing to me and what he did to me when I was younger, that she would come after me and she would sue me and she would do all these things to me just to keep me quiet, even though I'm not the only one that has came out and said that he had done something to us. So after maybe 2 months of staying with my mother, I got off the medications, and I think after like 2 weeks of being off my medications, I started to realize that I had this like energy lift off of my shoulders. Like, I didn't feel like I was carrying a weight with me all the time. I felt like I had more control over what I said, how I acted. I didn't have the shakes anymore, where I didn't twitch. I wasn't like an autistic child. And there's nothing wrong with people who are autistic. I'm just saying that that's kind of what it felt or looked like while I was on medication. And I moved out of my mom's house because she wasn't being very nice to me. And I was done with the way that I was being treated. So I left and I stayed at a homeless shelter. And I was pregnant. And I ended up having a miscarriage. And the boy that I was with broke up with me because, well, he was a mama's boy. There's nothing wrong with loving your mama, but this was a whole different situation. Like, he allowed his mom to make every decision for him. That included when it was really late outside. And keep in mind, he was 23 at the time. When it was really late outside, my mom's like, oh, honey, you can stay the night if you want. You know, it's dark and dangerous. We want you to stay the night, you know, to make sure you're safe. Well, he called his mother, and his mother said no. And said that that's disrespectful for you to expect to stay at someone's house, a girl's house. Keep in mind, he was 23 years old. I also dropped out of high school because of the bullying and the things that I was going through while I was at school, and everything just became too much for me because I miscarried and whatnot. And then his mom said, oh, well, I don't want my son being with anyone who isn't in school or who didn't finish school. So for him, I went back to school before he broke up with me. And I tried really hard to complete it. But again, I was extremely stressed out. I had a lot of traumas to process that I ignored, and I miscarried. And then on top of that, he broke up with me. He had his mother break up with me over text, and I absolutely lost my mind. Like, I burst into tears. I ran like 4 blocks. I think it was 4 blocks, maybe it was 2, and just hid in a public restroom and bawled my eyes out, because for the first time I was able to experience a heartbreak. Like, yes, I've had a boyfriend before when I was 16, and it didn't feel like this at all. I had an emotional bond with this man. He took my virginity. And so it was a whole different situation. So I got to feel a whole new feeling of heartbreak. And then I was gone out of the shelter for 2 hours, and I was stolen from. All my stuff was stolen. Everything that I got from my foster family, even a blanket that I've had since I was like 9 years old, all of it was stolen. And I knew exactly who was wearing my stuff and who had my stuff, because they were walking around proudly with it. And there was nothing I could do about it because I was stupid. I put my duffel bag under my bed, and I left it there thinking that it was going to be safe, thinking that I was going to be respected, that people weren't going to touch my stuff and steal my stuff. Even though I grew up in a place where people were stealing my stuff all the time, so it didn't even make sense. I was just taught to trust people, even though I really didn't trust people, you know? And then after 2 months of being separated from that man, I ended up just attaching myself to any human being that said hi to me, because I didn't know any better. I got in negative situations because, well, I didn't know any better. And I got hurt a lot, and not in romantic relationships, but I got stolen from. I got pushed around a lot, and I got hurt by people that I thought I could trust because they were just being really friendly to me. And they just ended up being really toxic. And then, while being attached to this group of people, I met one of my ex-fiancés. And I was an idiot. We got engaged within 2 weeks of being together. And he was sweet and nice and kind, and you know, I guess things are a bit different when you have a sexual connection with someone where you've actually had sex with them, so you have a bond with them. And so, like, we were together, and then stupid things were happening. He started fights with me for no reason whatsoever, and because of everything I've been through, like, it would really affect me physically, and I didn't know how to deal with it at that time. And one morning I woke up to a bunch of text messages saying that he was breaking up with me, and it's because we fought a lot, but really, whose fault was that? You know, it was his. And yeah, after maybe, I don't even know how long we were separated for, I decided to ask him because we were texting again, we were talking again, and he seemed like he wanted to get back with me. And he said, nope, we're never getting back together, even though he was calling me baby and honey and sweetie, like a bunch of other things that indicated that we were together. But that wasn't the case. And so he's like, no, we're never getting back together. And that day I saw a guy that I was raised with, someone I grew up in group homes with, someone I had a bond with. And he invited me to hang out. So we were both homeless. We both grew up in like foster care and lockdown facilities. And so we knew what each other went through. And we became like this again, like, but stronger. And then he asked me out and I said yes. And we got into a relationship and we got really close. And then he started drugs. And he started abusing me. And then I ended up getting pregnant. And he started getting worse with the abuse. And I only stayed because I loved him and I thought that he was going to change, go back to normal. And I was very naive. And I wanted the man back that I loved. And that just didn't happen. And I got pregnant. And I realized that some of the people that I hung out with weren't very good people. So I tried to kick them out of my life, which in turn they ended up retaliating against me. That includes my own cousin, who's a psycho, and she and a bunch of other people I tried to get out of my life to better my life for my baby. They started making false reports on me to CPS because they didn't like my face and they didn't like the fact that I was telling them no. And because no one believed me, and my cousin is a charmer, she's a psycho, but she's a charmer, and that's one of the signs or symptoms of someone being a psychopath, or the other word to that. She's a charmer, so no one believed me. And she had her hand in Child and Family Services. She had a friend, she could get information. She was always making false reports against people if she didn't like someone or someone told her no, and they would lose their children because she's a psycho. And when I told her, like, hey, I don't want to hang out anymore, like, this is just too toxic, she literally said that she was going to make sure that I lost my son because I told her no. And I tried to stay away from those people. I tried to better my life. I got on housing, a housing voucher, Section 8 voucher. That was going to end up being like 3 years on the waiting list. So I decided to go to this unwed home called Mountain Home, Montana, and it's for young moms. Like, there was even like 16-year-old mom that was pregnant or had children, and the age that they go up to is 24. So they help people 16 to 24. There's case management, there's help, blah, blah, blah. And I think I was like 19 weeks pregnant at the time. And I remember when I went there, I got really overwhelmed because of the way that the system was. And I got so used to just rebelling it, like doing whatever I wanted. And that place was like the group homes that abused me. And if you want to hear some of the things that happened to me in those group homes, I have videos describing the stuff that happened to me on this channel, so you can go looking for those videos. I think they're labeled like childhood videos or childhood whatever, so you'll know it when you see it. And I guess I just had too much anxiety, and after 2 weeks I left because I didn't know what to do. It was a feeling that I didn't ever want to feel again, and it just reenacted my PTSD, and I left. And I was young. I was trying to find my way, and I had things against me and people after me, and it was just a whole bowl of confusion. And so I left. I still had outpatient case management through those places. And when I was like 8 or 9 months pregnant, I was promised that if I went into this unwed home in Helena called Florence Crittenton, which is exactly where my mom was at when she was younger, when she lost my older sister, Vanessa. This place is absolutely horrendous. And they said that if I lived there, I could keep my baby. But there was nothing like court appointed, nothing. I just thought it was like a resource, like something that would help me. So, being an idiot, I went anyway. I got a ride, they dropped me off, and they threw away most of the baby things that I had because they wanted to provide things. So they threw away my car seat and all this other stuff, which I think it's like a funding thing, so that they could get funding. And at first it was okay. Then the roommate that I was staying with, she was neglecting her baby. And because, you know, I'm the person that I am, I would go and take care of the baby because the baby would puke all over itself and it would be face down in its own puke choking. And the staff would expect me to leave that baby to choke on its own vomit. And I could not do that. So what I would do is if I noticed that the baby was puking, especially choking on it, I would go over there. I would change like the clothes that it was in, wipe off its neck and its face with a baby wipe, and I would put a new like baby blanket thing under the baby and then put the baby back. So it was all cleaned up and stuff like that. And people were realizing I was doing this. Because the baby would be cleaned up and stuff like that. The baby would be under a different blanket. But also I was telling the staff, like, hey, this is happening. I'm really worried about this baby. This baby is just left alone for 20 minutes at a time. And it is choking on its own vomit. And I cannot leave it like that. Because there's rules, you can't take care of another person's baby, blah, blah, blah. But the baby was choking on its own vomit. And they expected me just to leave the baby there choking on its own vomit. I'm not going to do that. And so I was getting in trouble, getting written up. And it became really overwhelming for me. And I was being treated the way that I was being treated in the group homes like I did when I was younger. And then I started having some medical issues where I was swelling really bad to the point where I couldn't even walk. I had to crawl to the bathroom some days. And I was having really bad contractions. And I pulled the staff aside and I said, this is what's happening. I need to go to the hospital right now. I can't walk. And she basically told me that I cannot go to the hospital until I am 4 centimeters dilated. Which, in fact, she is not... I don't even think she was a nurse, but she wasn't even legally able to check me like that. She's not a doctor. She's not a nurse. She wasn't qualified to check to see if I was in fact dilated, to see up inside of me. She was not qualified to do that. And also, it wasn't true what she said, because I talked to the hospital and they're like, oh my gosh, like, no. But I started to get really frustrated, and I was extremely exhausted emotionally, and the things that were happening to me there. And I was telling my therapist back from where I was from what was happening to me. And I had my main phone that was on, and then I had 3 like flip phones that were like secret that they didn't know about. And they took my phone from me when they found out that my therapist was planning on coming to rescue me out of the situation that I was in. And they would force me, they were holding me hostage. They wouldn't let me leave. And they had a staff held up at my door, and they wouldn't let me leave. I was 19 years old. They had no right to keep me there. There was no legal thing that said that they had to keep me there. But what they said is, oh, well, there's an open pending case against you with CPS, which legally they can't do. Like, you have to physically cause neglect and abuse to the child and at risk of doing it again for them to be in your life. But instead, they were red flagging me because of my foster care experience when I was a child, and because of all the people that false reported against me that I was trying to get away from. So basically, they had me held up in this room with a staff present. They wouldn't let me leave unless it was to go to the bathroom or therapy, or talking with this lady that would do phone calls. She said that basically what she told me is after they took my phone away, they said that all my phone calls will be monitored, and if I even tried to tell anyone what was happening to me, that they were going to end my calls immediately and I would have to go back to my room. And I was extremely overwhelmed, and I got on a phone call with my mother, and she asked me what was wrong, and I immediately burst into tears because I was so stressed out and didn't know what to do. And during that whole time, that lady was holding her finger over the hang up button, like teasing me, like, if you say anything, I'm gonna hang up, I'm gonna hang up, I'm gonna hang up. But it wasn't like her saying that out loud. It was with her finger over the button, like I knew exactly what she was trying to do. So I told my mom, like, hey, I can't tell you. I was told I'm not allowed to tell you what's happening. We have to change the subject or she's going to hang up on you. And obviously my mom didn't understand, and so I had to like hurry up and try to change the subject before she tried to continue with the conversation. And after the phone call, I got extremely overwhelmed and I snapped at the lady because I was full of hormones. I was emotionally exhausted because of everything that they were putting me through. And I literally stood up out of my chair and started cursing out the staff because I didn't know what to do. And the look on her face was like a pure shock. And she told me to go to my room. And I did. And then I got overwhelmed and I said I wanted to leave. They wouldn't let me leave. So I used one of my emergency 911 flip phones and I called the police. The police came and told them that they could not hold me hostage, that there was no legal thing saying I had to stay there, and they had to let me leave, but I had to do it appropriately. I had to sign like the documents and stuff like that. And then when he left, they refused to let me leave, and they continued to try to hold me hostage. then like maybe a week later, I asked again if I could leave, and they said, well, we'll try. We'll get the manager so that like on Monday or whatever day it was, you could sign the papers so that you can leave. So I thought that they were going to let me leave. But then when the time came and the staff or manager or whoever it was pulled me aside, she's like, oh yeah, we're not doing that. You're staying here because you have an open pending case with CPS. Like, they were like holding me hostage there, so I couldn't leave state or be in a safer situation. They were trying to steal my baby from me. And I got frustrated, and obviously I got sent back to my room with a staff present in front of my door holding me hostage, even after the police officer said that they can't do that, and I was 19, nothing holding me there. And I think it might have been like a couple days later, or maybe even a day later, the staff pulled themselves away and went to what they called mother-baby side, which was the side of one of the units, which was for like children who were like extremely young. Like, there was an 11-year-old child pregnant. She could barely hold herself up with her big belly. She was a little cute pregnant little girl, and I know that's bad to say, but she was, and I felt really bad for her. But there was the mother baby side, and the staff was going to go over there because they needed to do something, so they left me alone, which was their bad, because I took the opportunity and I forgot that there was cameras, but I didn't care. I packed a little bag and I took off. I ran out of one of the doors and I ran down the sidewalk, and the nearest building that I saw was a church. And I was like, thank God, I can get away. I can get help. I felt like I was a kidnapped victim seeing fresh air again and could get help. And I ran up the hill and I went into the church and I panicked and I was like, I need help right now. I'm being held hostage and I'm scared. I'm pregnant. And they were getting ready to help me. And then the staff apparently saw me. And a couple of the staff came in and goes, don't help her. She's a runaway. I'm like, I'm 19. You can't hold me. You can't do this to me. And she's like, well, if you don't get in this car and come back with me right now, I'm going to call CPS on you and you're going to get your kid taken away. And I'm going to call the police, and they know our organization, so they will side with us and blah, blah, blah. And I said, you know what? This is disrespectful. This is a church. So we can go out into the parking lot, but I am not getting in that cart with you. So we went out in the parking lot and I said, you know what? I'll call the cops because this is not okay. The place already told you can't hold me hostage. And that I was 19. There's nothing to hold me there. And so I called the police. Obviously, dispatch yelled at me because they said that it was an emergency. When it was, I was being held hostage, but they still sent a police officer to me, and while we were waiting for the police officer, they kept running their mouth at me saying that they're not going to believe anything that I say, and that the police will always side with them because they're a well-known organization, and everything that they say, the police officer is going to believe, and blah, blah, blah. And then the police officer gets there, and to my surprise, he actually was very supportive. Like, he was very kind to both parties, but he did say, you know, hey, you have to let her leave. You can't hold her hostage there. You have to let her leave. She promised me that if she is in labor or she feels like her and her baby are in danger, that she will call 911 and get to the hospital. Well, they're like, okay, fine, whatever. And the police officer said, you have to give her stuff by 5 p.m. because if you do not, she could call me back and get you guys for theft. And so obviously the staff was pissed because they didn't have a leg to stand on at that time. And they're like, well, we're going to call CPS on her. And the police officer said, hey, I've been trained in this. She's okay. She's fine. She promised me everything's going to be okay. Please don't do that to her. And they're like, well, it's in our policy that we have to do that. And they got really pissy. And so he turned and looked at me and goes, Miss Mason, I'm really sorry, but they're going to call CPS on you. And there's nothing I can do about it. I can't stop them because it's their policy. But what I can do is make sure that they're not holding you hostage anymore. And so I was able to get my phone and I was able to get all my stuff. And I contacted someone that I knew in the group home because he was in Helena, which is where Florence Crimson is. And him and his mom said that I could stay with them. And the whole situation was really weird. And a day later, I went into labor and didn't know it. And my friend, whoever the frick it was, she took me to the hospital. She bought the car seat for me, got a crib and everything, and she was going to help me out. And then when I was able to, she was going to take me back to Missoula where I could utilize my vouchers and get into housing and, take care of my baby and stuff like that. But and we knew, and I told her I was afraid. She was an LPN. She was a licensed nurse practitioner. And I told her about my situation and that I was afraid that they were going to take my baby. And she said, well, I'll be there with you to make sure that they don't take advantage of you. But she had to work, so she couldn't stay with me 24/7. She tried to get her son to stay with me, he was supposed to be my friend. Technically, he was supposed to be my boyfriend, and he didn't stay in there with me. So I was alone. And 10 minutes after I got there, and yes, while I was in labor, my friend's mom was in there with me. And I literally 10 minutes after I went to the hospital, they called CPS on me. So there is literally no reason why they called CPS. Because there wasn't really anything that they were calling CPS about. They red flagged me at the hospital and was told to call CPS when I got to the hospital. So within 10 minutes of me being there, the nurse or whoever immediately went and called CPS. And after I had my baby, 2 days later, a CPS worker came to visit me and started threatening me. And was like, if you don't sign these documents, you'll never get to see your son again. You'll never do this. You'll never do that, blah, blah, blah. Which basically she was trying to get me to sign the safety home plan, which I didn't know I had a choice. And I was afraid. So I signed these papers, not wanting to, and I told her I didn't want to sign them, but she didn't care. And nobody was in there to protect me because my LPN friend was at the old folks home that she worked at, being an LPN. And so what ended up happening is they let me go home, but they told me I was not allowed to leave town because our original plan was that after I had the baby, I was going to leave town and I was going to go back home and, get back on my feet and stuff like that. But they told me that I was not allowed to leave and that if I left, they would take my baby and I would never get to see him again. So I was practically being held hostage in that area. And then a couple days later, after I brought my son home, he stopped eating and I didn't know what to do. So I took him to the doctor. The doctor refused to do anything wouldn't help me, wouldn't give me any advice, and said that if he lost any more weight, that they were going to diagnose him with failure to thrive. And so I got more scared because I wasn't getting help, and I was living with an LPN. So she told me to put just a little bit, not a lot, just a tad bit of prune juice in the formula and mix it up. And within 30 minutes, my son went to the bathroom. He was a healthy, smiling baby again. He wasn't uncomfortable, and he was eating again. And then the next clinical visit, right when they were going to take us back, they weighed him, and he hadn't had his food in his belly yet, because right then it was time to feed him. So I was going to feed him afterwards, which was like an ounce or two of formula. And the doctor says, well, Miss Mason, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to take him to the hospital because he's an ounce off. So he was fine. He was fine. Even the LPN that I lived with said that he was fine, and we were really confused. Well, we fed him on the way to the hospital, even stopped to get McDonald's for us, and we went into the hospital. And people can judge me for going to McDonald's and not running to the hospital immediately. You can go ahead and do that because I don't care, because my son was fine. And then we get him to the hospital, just to appease because they told us to, even though we technically didn't have to. And we took him to the hospital to weigh him again. The nurses said he was fine. He was right at the weight he was supposed to, and blah, blah, blah. And so then we're like, so why are we here? Can we leave? And they're like, no, because the doctor, who's our boss, said that we have to admit him to the hospital because that's what our boss said. And so we're really confused. We're like, well, why are we still here then? Like, we don't have to be here. Well, the doctor said blah, blah, blah. So now, even though my son was okay, we had to stay in the hospital, which I found out that I could have left. Like, I found out that they didn't have the rights to hold us there. And then I did something stupid because the person that was supposed to be my friend, he was beating his mom and screaming and freaking out, and I just didn't feel safe in the situation I was in anymore, and I wanted to go home, which was the original plan. I wanted to go home. And because I wasn't allowed, even though it was in the same state, and our towns are small, and they wouldn't let me go home. And a CPS worker came in, and I told her like an idiot what I was going through, and she twisted it. She acted as if she caught me, like, purposely putting my son in this situation. But really, I asked her for help. I said, hey, can I just go home? Can I go in a safe situation with my son? Like, I don't feel safe in here anymore because of this and this and this. And she turned it around in the paperwork into the judge that I purposely put my son in a dangerous situation and was continuing to stay in that situation, which wasn't even it. I asked if I could leave. She said no, and then proceeded to say that she was taking my son no matter what I said, and said that I had to sign these legal documents without reading them. And then I later on found out what it was. She said that I had to sign them, and that without reading them, and that she didn't have, and that if I did not sign them, I would never get to see my son ever again. And so I was afraid, and I was young. And I signed the paper, and I said, hey, can I read them now? And she ripped them out of my hands, held them up to her chest, said, I don't have time for that. I have to leave. And she left with my signature, and I was stupid. I didn't know my rights. I didn't know that I didn't have to sign that, and I didn't want to sign it. She coerced me into signing it, which is a felony. It's against the law. Any signature, anything that is coerced is not legal standing, which means that I could get it reversed if I tried. And I'm also going to do more videos on some of the legal paperwork that I have to prove that I was innocent, if I can still get a hold of them. And so she ran off with the documents, and then before my son was unadmitted from the hospital, they had a CPS worker come pick up my son to be dropped off with my foster family that I thought I could trust. And that whole thing is going to be in another video of describing all that. But with my first court hearing, they proved that I was innocent, that I was not the cause of my son being sick, and I was not the cause of my son losing all that weight, because he started having issues when he moved into the foster family, and they had to change his formula. But the judge bluntly said to me, I want to say it word for word, he said, it wasn't like they put a gun to your head when it came to the stuff with the signature that they stole and coerced me into signing. So he refused to sign that. But what he said was, we know you're innocent, but we're going to keep your baby just in case, but because you are disabled. They did not give me a chance. They refused to give me a chance, and I'm actually not as disabled as they were painting me out to be. Mostly it's trauma, like extreme trauma that I went through that causes me to have the problems that I have today. And that doesn't mean that I wouldn't have been able to parent or anything, but they didn't give me a chance. And that will also be in the other video that I'm going to do. And I don't know how long that's going to be until I can film that video. But I'm sorry for the length of this video. I have a really long life and a lot of trauma. And yeah, so he admitted that I was innocent, but then said that he wasn't going to return my child. And legally, they have 60 days to prove my innocence, which it took that first court hearing, and they did not return my son. After 60 days, if they have not proven haven't proven that I was innocent, they have to return my son and close the case. They did not do that at all. They gave me 2 weeks with my son before they started the crap and stole my child. And then use that as saying that they legally, because they have to deal with things privately with me before they go legally and trying to take my son or give me a treatment plan, which they did not do. And because I refused to get the nurse from that toxic environment that I ran from Florence Crittenton, they said that I wasn't following directions. And that is one reason why they took my son. When really I was trying to get a nurse that could check and stuff outside of that situation so that I could get a nurse that I could trust that would be honest. But because I refused to go with the people that they wanted, which legally I don't have to, they decided to say that I wasn't following protocol, or I wasn't doing this, or I wasn't doing that. So it was easier for them to take advantage of me and steal my son. So there's more to this situation when we go to video 2. And that's probably going to be an hour 2. So again, I apologize for the length of this video. I also apologize that everything is everywhere and jumbled up and blah, blah, blah. But it was the only way I felt like I could get it out without writing it down, giving myself a chance to unconvince myself not to make these videos. Okay, I hope that you somewhat enjoyed these videos and that this was educational for you, and it helped you with whatever you're dealing with as well. I will go to the next video as soon as I am able. You guys be safe.